Welcome back to Tennessee Court Talk. We are continuing our conversation on the history and inner workings of the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals with Judge Robert Wedemeyer, Judge Camille McMullen, Judge Ross Dyer, and Judge Jill Ayers. What is the role of a presiding judge involved beyond running meetings and assigning cases?
So the role of the presiding judge, at least my experience, really it did involve a lot of administrative duties, handling, setting the dockets, interacting with the clerks across the state, just to make sure the docket is. There are no problems with setting the cases, managing the court in terms of setting meetings and the agenda for our meetings, and managing what is on the agenda, fielding those questions from the other members of the court, and making sure that everybody, you're kind of like the center of the communication. You're the communication person for everyone. People may not respond as quickly to Judge Dyer, but they will respond to Judge Wedemeyer because they know that he's got information that they need to pay attention to. So that's that. You're the main communicator. You're also the face of the court primarily. That's, at least for me, that's the way I held the position out to be. You're interacting with other state presiding judges. You're interacting with the chiefs on the other appellate courts. You're in terms of the Court of Appeals, in terms of the Supreme Court, they're managing their dockets, and you're communicating. You're the point person for them for the court. So, people say, there's not a lot to it. It's a title. But I think, at least from my experience, there was a lot more to it than just setting the docket.
I would point out everybody on our court is a leader, a competent, a person who's totally capable of doing their job. And so there are 12 of us, and if one person's going to be the presiding judge, it's basically, you can kind of lead by example, and make sure everybody gets their voice heard if there's something they need to be heard about, and then work with as Judge McMullen pointed out, work with the clerks to make the docket flow smoothly and things like that. I've already done some things interacting with some of the other courts about this, that, and the other, and try to represent these other 11 judges who I respect and admire, and not lead us astray, so to speak.
Judge Wedemeyer, as the presiding judge, he gets the calls from the Chief Justice to say, hey, what's going on with X judge, or X judge's docket. And back in the old days, we had presiding judges who had to, manage their colleagues' dockets who, may not have been as good at managing as others, so those, and they responded to the presiding judge in a certain way, because that person, held the respect of the court. And I guess I'm going a roundabout way of saying, sometimes judges aren't as timely as they should be. And, the presiding judge has the role of saying, hey, you need to get on your job of being timely, especially when, the Supreme Court, that's their job too, is making sure that judges are timely issuing their opinions. And so there's good and bad parts of the administration piece of being the presiding judge.
Does being in multiple cities across the state affect that, managing all the timeliness issues and things like that?
I mean, technology has been great in helping us be more timely in the issuance of our opinions, and I attribute a lot of that to the Supreme Court and their investment in technology over the past few years, as well as our appellate court clerk. His commitment to seeing, C-Track and a lot of the other things that help us circulate records, things like that.
Well, I've got 3 more questions, and they involve everyone, not just the 2 presiding judges. What would you want the public to better understand about how appellate judges make decisions?
I would like the public to understand about the way we make decisions that we do not make political decisions. We make decisions based on the law and the evidence and what happened at the trial court level. And there's no, there are 12 of us, but it's not like, well, there are 8 liberals and 4 conservatives, or it's not a political. The interesting thing is, to become a judge, you almost have to be involved politically in some way or another, originally at least. But once you become a judge, you are not making decisions on any kind of political or partisan basis. The judiciary is the third branch of the government, and it's supposed to be strong and independent of politics. And particularly handling these criminal cases, we're not. I think everyone has said earlier, or Judge McMullen, we're not making policy. We're just looking at what happened at a criminal trial. All of us want that trial to have been a fair trial for both the state and the defendant, and we want to look at it very carefully and closely and take our time. But although our court operates pretty fast for an appellate court, it's not going to be years before you get a decision on this court. It might be a couple of months, but what I would like the public to know is that we're working hard to have a fair outcome on these cases, and it's not a political process.
I'd add to that, Wedemeyer. It's even more than just not political. I would say, I have issued opinions that I did not like the result I had to reach. That I want the public to know that it's, we're not writing to reach an outcome we want. We're writing based on what the law dictates us and how we review the case. I've had cases where I've thought, oh, I really don't like that, but that's the answer. And so we're not writing to reach a specific result. We're writing to reach what we believe the law says is the correct result. And we don't always like what we write, but we do our best to follow the law.
The public probably doesn't know there's no reason for them to know who we are or what we do. As a matter of fact, I had a friend the first time I was on the ballot, she called me from the ballot booth and said, "Girl, your name is on this ballot. Did you know you were on the ballot?" And I said, "Yes, please vote for me." Because people don't realize that there is an appellate court. Your layperson, unless you're somehow involved in some litigation, they don't realize that there is another layer of courts that are here to protect their constitutional rights. And judges do matter. Your first tier judges matter, your second tier judges matter, and your third tier judges matter.
And I just had one more thing I'd like to add to what we would like for the public to know about what we do. A lot of the cases we deal with are really unpleasant, high profile criminal cases, especially in smaller communities. And there's usually a lot of media coverage. And I think it's important for the public to know that our opinions are based solely on what is in the record and what came out at the trial court. So there may be facts and information out in the public that may or may not be true, even just from sensationalized headlines in the media. But our opinions are based on what is in the record, what did or did not come in at trial, what all of those specific facts are that came in at trial. And then, as mentioned before, we're going to apply the law to those facts. So I think sometimes people misunderstand. They've seen these big headlines about what they think a case is about. And our opinion, may not be exactly about that, because it may be about one nuanced issue on a particular pretrial motion or something in the case. And so I think sometimes the public doesn't necessarily understand what we are reviewing, the specific issue we are reviewing, and and how we apply the law to that. And I think if they read our cases, obviously our goal is to make sure they do understand that, but that's not always what comes out in the headlines when you see, Court of Criminal Appeals denies someone a new trial or grants a new trial. They may not really understand the legal basis for that ruling.
As criminal law continues to evolve and now involves new technologies and new situations, what challenges or changes do you see ahead for criminal court?
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Just the big one, AI. I mean, the constant challenge with first, lawyers utilizing AI. And I don't want to get on a big tangent, but I don't have a problem with lawyers using AI as long as they check their work. Also AI in the courtroom or social media in the courtroom, what that means, what that looks like, verifying where things are coming from, verifying the validity of things. Also AI replacing young lawyers, because it's just a double-edged sword. I think I think it does make some lawyers, some small law firms more productive, but on the other hand, it's eliminating some jobs for young lawyers and making it more difficult for them to learn in the practice. Oh, so many things associated with AI. That's a whole nother podcast, Nick.
I
Yeah.
think that's the biggest hurdle on so many different levels that's getting ready to hit the court system. I mean, whether it's a piece of evidence at trial and whether you can authenticate it or not, to who's writing what and is what they're writing, did AI make stuff up in writing that brief? I mean, there's so much to that right now.
The court system is always catching up. We're behind, so we're catching up. But from what I'm hearing from lawyers who are on the front line, there are also these other software packages that are coming out that are basically alerting you that this is an AI product that you're reading. So it's not within the court system yet, but it's coming. I mean, it's coming, and it's just going to be interesting to see how we manage that.
The other thing in the criminal justice system, there's a lot of talk about reform as far as, we only have so much money to build prisons and staff prisons. And, there's a whole different topic, I guess, maybe for a different day, but that is, how can we, what, if anything, can we do to reform the criminal justice system as far as the remedies with regard to what to do about the people who commit the crimes and what the punishment should be and that type of thing. It's going to be more and more challenging, I think, as we go forward. The man on the street might say, well, put him in prison and keep him there as long as possible. And in some cases, that may be the best thing. But in general, we've got a challenge ahead to try to figure out, because if we do that, we can't afford, as a society, we can't really afford to do that. So some alternatives need to be out there and need to be explored, I think.
I would kind of piggyback on what Judge Wedemeyer was saying, but go in a little bit of a different direction. To me, a bigger problem that we're going to see in the criminal justice system is the overworked appointed attorney for criminal defendants and the public defender's office. I know the Tennessee Supreme Court has worked tirelessly to get funds for indigent representation. The more crime that we see, the more we are going to need lawyers who can handle represent defendants in court. And what we see, honestly, Nick, a lot of times it's just poor lawyering, and it's not because the lawyer is not a good lawyer. It's the majority of the time it's because the lawyer is overworked and not paid well. So one of the things that we will see and that we are seeing is just the lack of resources for our appointed and public defender categories of lawyers. But there are reforms underway right now to bring in other lawyers to take on appointed cases, or a system to put a system in place to have lawyers be on the ready to come in and handle criminal representation, because it's not something that you just pick up. You have to learn how to do it. So when we bring, lawyers in from, civil law, it takes time to understand how to do criminal work. So that's one of the challenges that I see on the horizon. It's been a challenge in the past, but it's going to be an even greater challenge as crime increases across the state.
All right, last question. What do you find most meaningful about serving on the Criminal Court of Appeals?
I mean, I just feel like it's an important service. I mean, all of us had lives before we came on the bench, whether that was the trial bench or straight to the appellate bench. And, most of us were some in government service, but some in private practice. And so when I chose to leave the private sector to come to the judicial system, I felt like it was important to take my years of experience and serve the public that way, with the fact that I think every case we deal with, I think in any judicial, any courtroom, but every case you deal with is so important to the people that are the litigants there, whether it's a defendant or a victim, or just, in criminal cases, the public at large. I feel like we do our best as a group to serve the public and to just ensure that we follow the law and make sure justice is done fairly on both sides of a case. So it's a real privilege and an honor to be able to serve in this capacity for the state of Tennessee.
Judge Dyer.
I think everybody who comes to this court comes believing they have something to offer, that they have a skill set, and clearly comes with a desire to serve the public, serve your state, however you want to look at that. And I find that, I would say in a lot of ways, I find that very rewarding. We've talked around and about, politics, so to speak, and Judge Wedemeyer's said a lot, this court is not that way. So I find it very rewarding that you have 12, that I get to work with 11 people who really are all here kind of under the common goal of wanting to serve, wanting to do the right thing, feeling they have a skill set, which all of them do, that is valuable. That's probably the most rewarding part of this, and the privilege to do it. One of our former presiding judges, John Everett Williams, used to say the Tennessee Court of Criminal Appeals is the best, not only the best job in the state, it's the best job in the country. And he's right. And I think that's the reason why. It's the group of people you get to work with who all, at the end of the day, are focused on a common goal of trying to do the right thing and serve their state.
Truly an honor to serve on this court with these great people. So thank you.
Thank you all for joining me on this discussion, shedding more light on how the appellate system works on the criminal level in Tennessee. Tennessee Court Talk episodes can be found wherever you find your favorite podcasts.